So personal issues to consider, all right? Basic physiological and psychological needs that a lot of people tend to ignore, all right? Thinking that they are unimportant or trivial, but trust me, if you plan to live there permanently, it matters, all right? Right down to whether the weather, all right? You like it or not? The environment, the food, all right? Because let's face it, in life, it's supposed to be balanced. Okay, if it's not balanced, you won't be happy, you won't be satisfied, right? So like Maslow hierarchy of needs, the first level is physiological needs. Okay? A lot of people, even ourselves, we tend to ignore this. We think it's so trivial, it doesn't count, but it does. Okay? So make sure they are compatible with you, right? Because everyone is unique, there's no right or wrong, but just compatible to you. Okay? So, such as the weather, this one I mentioned before. Right? So the key thing is establish your value system first. And that value system also encompasses all these physiological and psychological needs. Okay? So this is something to consider. Right? So, and also, I heard a lot of stories is, yeah, they are not happy, but they're doing it for the kids. Doing it for the kids. But I can assure you that, I'm a kid to someone, right? Everyone is a kid to someone, right? I can assure you that if you know your dad or your mom is such a miserable state, you won't be happy at the end, right? Right? So don't find that excuse doing it for the kids, right? If you are not happy, I'm sure later on, right, they won't be happy too. Unless they don't care about you. They don't give a damn about how you think. But I'm sure you don't want to, to go towards that type of bond, right? So this is something to consider. Alright, so those are personal issues to consider. Now I want to talk about some external issues to consider. Political freedom versus economic freedom. So a lot of people say that over here we have very limited political freedom. Yes, I agree. Compared to the West, yes. But over here we have relatively more economic freedom compared to the Western world at this stage. Right? Western world 100 years ago was a pretty free market. So that's why you have big companies like KFC and all that. Coca-Cola, right? Standard Oil. How they start the business? From the basement. KFC, sell fried chicken all over, even in the train station. But try doing that in Flinders Station today. Okay? You get clamped down and you get a fine. Right? KFC, Colonel Sanders, right? Have a gas station, petrol station. So his specialty is fried chicken. So he set up a few tables and few chairs. That was back in the 50s and all that. Okay? Start serving fried chicken. And guess what? The people love it. It was a long queue. Alright? You can find this documentary in YouTube. Alright? But usually this kind of documentary you have very low heating. Right? But if you have some semi-naked woman, then it goes to like 10 million hits. Right? But it's all there, all this information. Okay? So, relatively, we still have more economic freedom here. When I say economic freedom, it does not mean that they don't allow you to do business. I mean that those regulations barrier, the capital layout barrier is much higher over there. For example, if you are very good at something, say you are very good at your nasi lemak, okay, you think it's so fantastic. Over here it's easier for you to start. You can go to a coffee shop, rent a store, start a business and let the public vote whether they like it or not. Over there, you need to start a proper restaurant, okay? And it's easily $500,000 Australian dollar, okay? And upwards. So that is what I call economic freedom. So that's why you need to understand what is more valuable to you. Alright? If you think political freedom is, then that's fine. But I just want you to understand there's a difference when you talk about freedom. Okay? So a lot of people don't think from that perspective. The second one is truth versus fact. Right? So what is truth? Truth is actually someone who is born in Middle East has a completely true version of how life is compared to someone who is born in Melbourne, right? So because the system value, the cultural value, the teaching is different. So truth to someone is very different, right? From one individual or one group to another. So we want to know the facts, okay? Someone will tell you, come back and say, Australia is very good, but that is his truth, but it may not be the fact for you, okay? Need to understand that. Need to understand what is government democracy and what is government competency. Okay? Over there, yes, it's very democratic. Every 3 years, you change it up. I mean, like, you get to have a general election, and usually it rotates. Okay? Either it's the coalition party or the Labour Party. Okay? That is government democracy. But the thing is, it has its downside drawbacks as well, because it changes so fast, nothing gets done. You don't have time to implement anything, right? So that is the thing. So the top, I live in a suburb called Rowville, is around 30 kilometers away from Melbourne CBD. They try to extend a line from Huntingdale Station down to Rowville. They've been talking that since 1969. Okay? And that is only like 11.5 kilometers distance. Alright? So that is something that you need to understand or consider in what sort of environment that you will be going into. But if you are okay, that's fine. Alright? So I'm not anti-Australia, I'm not bashing Australia. Alright? So Mr. Ambassador from Australia, don't come to me. I'm just telling you my opinion. Okay? There's no right or wrong. Just offering some perspective for you to ponder before, during your decision-making process, okay? So think about the trend moving forward, don't chase after yesterday's news, all right? The Western world was very great, the leader, in economic, until now, but that was, the growth stage was gone, okay? That was 100 and 150 years ago, okay? In Melbourne, in Australia, by 2007, there's no more car manufacturers. Previously, there's three major car assembly lines in Melbourne itself. Okay, there's Holden, Ford, and the other one is Toyota. So they will all close down by 2017. Okay, so there you go then. So these are, right? And one more thing, more insights. Alright? Do not listen only to how Asians view about the West. Alright? So, such as the government, social values, education system, healthcare system. It's wise to listen to views from Westerners themselves. Say, for example, like in Malaysia, you want to know the truth about the political scene. Do you read The Star? Utusan? No, right? Mainstream media? No. We read alternative news, okay? These people review the truth. But there is the same thing, right? If you get your facts from mainstream media, it's the same like here, okay? So, know and more perspective, alright, from people like YB here. There are people like that in Australia, equivalent, okay? So that review more truth. So I don't know, so these are, for me, these are some people that are worth listening to, okay? First of all, is Jim Rogers. If you haven't heard of Jim Rogers, he's a co-founder of Quantum Fund with George Soros back in 1970s. And in 8 years, from 1970 to 1978, the fund had a record return of 4,500%, okay? And he retired at age 37, very down-to-earth person. All this you can Google him up, and then YouTube him up, and then you will see a lot of his views. Okay? He got scholarship, went to Yale, later on went to Cambridge. Alright? So his famous quote, I cannot share all the things he said, but I will just quote some of his famous quote. If you are smart in 1980s, you move to London. 1800s, you move to London. If you are smart in the 1900s, you move to New York. If you are smart in 2000s, you move to Asia. Okay? So Jim Rogers took his own advice and moved to Singapore with his family with 2 primary school going children in 2008. Right? Both are educated in Mandarin. And lately, I think last year, the daughter won the National Singapore Public Speaking Mandarin competition. Okay? Blonde girl, blue eyes. She wants her kids to grow up in Asia, knowing the Asian values because of China, right? By the way, he thinks 21st century will be the century of China, Asia, but dominated by China. Okay, so his book, Investment Bikers, travel the world 2 times. 1 time is on motorbikes. All right, it's in the Guinness World of Records. So just to introduce him. Again, number 2, Dr. Mark Faber, founder of newsletter Gloom Boom Doom. Famous quote from Dr. Mark Faber: all central bankers have no clue on what they are doing. They only know how to play around with interest rate. Okay? And they are only academics sitting in a glass tower trying to fix your life. Okay? So Mark Faber is worth listening to. So Mark Faber is from Switzerland and has been living in Hong Kong and Thailand since 1970s. So that's him. The other one that's worth listening to is Peter Schiff, the founder of Euro Pacific. He's from the US, right? He tried to run for senator, I think, in Chicago, but it didn't turn out. So his famous quote from Peter Schiff is: student loan, this is in America, is a major factor why college tuition fees in US has skyrocketed over the decades. You must ask yourself, why is the television getting cheaper and cheaper if you look 30 years from now? But why is college tuition fees going higher and higher? What is the reason? Right? In US, because the student loan is a government guaranteed debt. Right? So you can get it from a private bank, the government guarantees that loan. And student loan in US is the only kind of loan that you cannot default on. Even you are broke, you are bankrupt, you still have to pay. The debt still stays with you. Okay? So if everyone can easily get that debt, so that's why you create an artificial demand for college education. So that's why the price skyrocketed. Worth checking him out on a lot of what is happening in the Western world now. Okay? So, another famous quote from Peter Schiff is: it's easier to set up business in China than the People's Republic of California, PRC too. Alright? Because the compliance cost is so great that it's very difficult for you to set up a business over there. That's him. And another person I listen to is Gerard Celente, a trend forecaster, founder of newsletter Trends Journal. Famous quote from Gerard Celente is: the merger between corporations and government is called fascism. Free market and individual freedom in US is long dead. Alright? So you don't have mom and pop store there anymore. Okay? So why I introduce these people to you, it gives you more insight, okay, of what is happening in the Western society, all right, rather than we see it from here and we try to understand what is happening there with a lot of our own perception, okay. So I hope that enlightens you a little bit, and that's him, Gerard Celente. And just for the record, we are not anti-West or anti-Australia, don't get us wrong, okay? We are just anti-lies, anti-myth, anti-conventional wisdom, alright? You need to think for yourself. If after all the consideration you still find that Australia or migration is right for you, that's good, because no one knows more about what you truly want other than yourself, right? But you need to check what's your value, your core beliefs and purpose in life, right? Because migration is about life, right? A better life. That's why people migrate since what? The dawn of human civilization. Am I right? So That is important, and values, core beliefs, and purpose in life, like what Dr. shared with us yesterday. We truly appreciate that. So, but do it with the right mindset, attitude, and action plan. Anyone can make it in Australia or anywhere in their own way at their own rate. Okay? So if you still want to go over, but make it like a business plan. Have an action plan. Go over there, check it out, okay? Break down big projects into small little steps to accomplish it, have an action plan, right? And I will pass this back to Ken, so he will share with you some of the current upcoming project that he's doing, all right? That's doing now.
Thank you, Michael. I'd like to quickly share what we're doing currently. That was the first book, Migrating to Australia, Good Man. And then we thought, why not make ourselves more useful? Because there's still a lot of people coming to Australia, wanting to come. Right? Not only Malaysians, but anyone that, we have a lot of students that come here to study, just so they can get their permanent residence later on. So it was born out of a project that I gave some students to do in RMIT Business TAFE School. I actually asked them to go out, talk to people, interview them, in any industry they're interested in. And they came back with very amazing results and deeply, strongly encouraged me, Michael, and a friend from Switzerland, his name is Ilya, who was in Australia at that time. So three of us actually set out to also interview other people that we think are successful. Because some of my students, they even took the courage, they had the courage to actually contact the Prime Minister's office of Julian Gillard. But they didn't get a reply. But I appreciate and admire their courage, to really walk up to people and to ask them how they succeeded. So we thought, why not we do it ourselves as well? And we did that, right? Now we're in the midst of revising, in the editorial process. We try to speed it up, just so we can come up with the book faster, earlier. And thanks so much to Gerard Budaya, Pak Chong, right, and everyone for the support. So we interviewed this young chap from London. He came to Australia only in 2008, started a company in 2009, executive search recruitment company, and they're doing very well in the, like 20s, millions, in terms of millions of dollars turnover. I think it was in the 95, close to $100 million turnover. But he's from London, right? And he's trying to expand to Asia, right, with his company. And this guy, Mr. AJ Basel, right, standing in front of, in the middle of me and Michael, right? He is the CIO of carsales.com.au. He's earning like almost close to $700,000 per year income. Our fellow Malaysian, Joyce, she actually started the first and only Malaysian magazine called Journey of Malaysian, Jom. So you can Google him online to find out some Malaysian perspectives. She's been doing a great job. This is my ex-uni classmate, my senior. He went back to Singapore after graduation, but he married someone from Wagga Wagga, where we studied. So her parents, Australians, they live in Wagga and they were aging. So after living about 8-9 years in Singapore, he decided to move back, right, with the wife to Wagga Wagga. Couldn't find a full-time job. Worked as an accounts clerk because he was a qualified accountant. He worked up to the rank of general manager in a trading company in Singapore, government-owned trading company in commodities, right? But he couldn't find a full-time job. So he went back to his passion, which is karate. So he trained people in Wagga and been doing a good job and making some waves. His daughter is doing very well at the state level. Mr. Daniel Achao is a young man I met in 2005. That time I was looking for jobs. I still haven't really got the teaching job. I got it in 2006. So I looked out to all these classified ads. Sometimes I go to them, what kind of job they're looking, they have to offer. And this guy was trying to recruit some salespeople to try to recruit all these tradies to be advertising on his website. Just like eBay for products and services, he's doing Service Central for trade services, plumbing, electricians and all that. and he's doing quite well today. Millionaire. And this guy is Jason Pang, right? He's doing another IT startup for uniform, right? Another consulting company, right? So the whole aim is our friend is training. He's in the training business, so we invited him to talk to some RMIT students during one of our classes. So we should be, I mean, we are very much like a sheep, but it's good to be a thinking sheep so that we don't end up as a sinking ship, follow everybody, follow the crowd. So thanks for watching, and finally we'd like to, express our utmost gratitude to everyone who has come, and for all the people here, right? If you come over to Australia, right, we give you a one-day free tour, just our sincere gesture of appreciation, right? We bring you around, shop like a local, talk to the agents, get a good feel of it, and you decide later on, right? It's your life, you call the shots. And we have actually put out another book, right, in electronic form, right, to show again our appreciation, because a lot of people read this book, they still want to come, they ask us questions about how they should buy a house. So we put together, I wouldn't say we wrote the book, we put together a book, right, drawing from few sources, few different publications, and come up with 8 things that we should all know when we buy a property in Australia. Because there could be a lot of mistakes we've been making, right? So we should know at least what we should do, right? 8 things we should know. So all you need to do is very simple. Just send an email to, khsong@hotmail.com, right? khsong@hotmail.com, and you get a free book. We send one to you, right? No question asked, right? It's so-called a book, but it's not a book. We actually draw the sources from all the experts who knew, right? In order to enlighten you even more. Okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ken and Mr. Michael, for the generous gesture and the insightful advice, which I believe is timely. And so right now we are proceeding to the question and answer session, which I'm sure that many of you have many questions and comments to put forth to the brothers. But at this point I would like to gently urge to keep your comments or questions short, albeit concise, so as to ensure that everyone will have a chance to put forth their comments and questions. And
good examples because they've made it. They've made it where they are. They can pick any Asian country they want because it's a gentler life. They have the option to pull back and go back. So that's not a good thing. But I have worked abroad. I'm not Malaysian because I get discriminated here. I get discriminated in the country where I'm citizen. I work abroad. I love Asia. Put me anywhere in Asia, I'll survive. And all my friends who are abroad, they hit Asia all the time because it's cheaper. Is it dentistry? Is it this? Is it that? Is it Asia is the place to be? I think, this is home. But switch doors quite nicer. Thank you so much. Very refreshing.
Thanks very much. I've actually read your book, totally.
Yes.
Very precisely, each sentence, each word used.
Sorry, can I just interrupt? Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, no problem.
Yeah, I'd just like to let everyone know that while we'll be leaving in 10 minutes time, so if you have any question to ask,
I will pose my question which I want to connect. So I think there's a similarity between the rhetorics of the opposition, the rhetorics of migrating to security. So this whole idea of migrating to security, that we are creating into people's mind, that it's able to migrate into security, into a secure living in such a brutal world, in such violent times, is also what I think the opposition of this country is telling us. Vote for the opposition, it's secure, it's security, it's better. But do you think this kind of Pepsi, Coca-Cola choices of things that still is so fundamentally embedded within something so similar, even to be constructive, whether it's there. So maybe that's my one question. My another question is, I would just like to show this. This is in the Malaysian Malaysian airports by the Australian government. No way will you make Australia your home. This is in the Malaysian Sepang and also PLI airports. There is a huge sign telling, and usually in Asianic languages. So most precisely, it's targeted to I think what you have also stereotyped as the Afghans and the Somalians, you know. So I think it's very important to understand. I'll make it very quick. I think it's very important to understand when you're targeting this book. I did not see it in the context that you're targeting this book to rich people who can afford to migrate, because you're talking about migration. I'm a writer. I write about migrations. I talk about the brutality of migration in general. As you're flying to Australia, there's so many people taking boats to Australia. So many people who are actually not even arriving at the shores of Australia because the boats are actually killing people at that time. So when you consider that actually you having a sense of privilege in that terms to actually talk about the things that you're talking in all this way. So that comes to my second point very precisely, that this whole idea of migrating, I think people, there's also a fourth category to it. The people who don't want to migrate but have to migrate because they need to find a living to live, yes, which a lot of people are in Australia. But I find that actually the economics that you support in your book, from Milton Friedman to Farid Zakaria to it's very troublesome. I find this very troublesome because you talk about Chomsky, Noam Chomsky, and then you talk about Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman was the man who ran a coup against Salvo Allende to kill, he manufactured economics. So the kind of economics that you are supporting in this book, I find the same kind of economics which propagates migration, forceful migration. You are a prudent anti-social welfare state. And you say that people are lazy, people will depend on social welfare. I find those kind of language very demeaning from a person who actually comes from a family, And my final point, sorry to be very quick, is I find the language. What will your advice be since you're migrants to Australia? I'm sorry, I just want to expand this a bit. Because what will your advice be to the migrants around the world and also just precisely in Malaysia, who at the moment has so many migrants? What is the migrant experience? Coming to that, I find that the language you use is extremely racist and misogynistic, sexist, classist. I'll give you one example and I'll end my thing. This is what you say in your book. You say this. You say that rather one would find good suburb everything in need and need. That is because one would be born into a Rust Belt neighborhood. I was born into a Rust Belt neighborhood, if you want to call it. In such schools, the children were already given up. This is why it's very important to make sure you live in a decent neighborhood. Bad suburbs are filled with social problems. And then you go on to say how to identify these bad suburbs. And what you say is, it's usually public housing and flats. So you're trying to say the poor people live there. And then you say, usually lived by Sudanese and Afghans. That's very racist language, I find. Because a person who works with refugees and migrants, I find that an extremely offensive language. And a person who comes from a working family, I find that extreme language. And I find that I had to waste time and wait for this book. And yeah, that's my point. Maybe if you could respond. I'm very humble.
Thank you.
Nicole.
Thanks a lot, Nicole. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for spending the good effort in going into length and the kind of level of details of reading the book, which I really appreciate. Now, I just like to quickly address one issue there. From some of the excerpts that you have read, we actually has also mentioned I think if you have read, you would have seen a line that we say that yes, these are very disturbing issues. The social ills and all that. Of course, is a big topic, right? But it is something that perhaps can be discussed in another book because really this level of our level of competence really does not justify us to really discuss into detail the kind of social broader concept of all these problems. But we did mention some something like if we are able to, first of all, sustain ourselves, have our good financial independence, we then can come back to these areas to actually address those problems.
And you have social welfare.
We did say that we can contribute to it. Now, I want to mention something that, okay, it's not so much of an ideological debate, this book. This book really is about two migrants coming as individuals, how you want to secure a better life for families, right? And I also think about the Afghan couples, that I used to help when we were writing that paragraph, right? Obviously, it is a generalization. We also run the risk of maybe angering some, African nationalities because they come from Sudan, they come from. Again, it's a very, very broad generalization. It is not meant to be really about, the kind of ideological ideal that we should, instill. I don't think all of us are qualified to really go into that also. And the other thing, point number 3, you mentioned about Chomsky, Friedman, and all that, right? Chomsky does, yes. First of all, we are not trained in economics, but some of the things they say, we agree, is because they did some very critical analysis about what is wrong with the Western world, what is wrong with globalization, so that it's not a win-win-win situation, because there are bound to be some losers, because economics is a zero-sum game, let's put it this way, and everybody is yasu and they try to climb up, but first of all, we find the value and then we do it at a pace that is comfortable to us. And this is where the book comes in, because while everybody have different ideologies and different value systems, but I like to say that it's fair to conclude that all of us want betterment for our families. Right? All of us want to improve our financial position. You see, all of us want to live a happier life. Success is nothing if you don't feel happy. And coming to Australia. Is it for you? Is it not for you? Anybody, right, has to be answerable to yourself, right? And not to follow the crowd, not to follow, what everyone says.
And of course, if you are in the Afghanistan situation, I would want to go there by boat,
Yes.
right? I mean, if we are in that situation, if I am in Iran now, right, of course I want to get out of that place. But of course, this book is not addressing to that group of people. It's the middle class Malaysian.
You should contextualize it because you do not give a context to it. You just say migration at large.
We thought that good man is really connecting to the Malaysian perspective, and also another message that me and Michael want to drive out is: are we taking for granted some of the things that we have here in Malaysia? And to be honest, I really start to feel now, there are a lot of things, right, that we have been taken for granted. End of the day, you want to go to a place where it's more meritocratic, solely because you want to find a stage for you to launch a career, for you to self-actualize, But when you go there thinking it's more meritocratic, right, and you were not given a stage, then you kind of come back and ask yourself, should I reposition myself in another place? And Michael has mentioned something about the grizzly bear. The grizzly bear doesn't know how to swim fast, is not agile, but he gets to eat a good fish, salmon, mainly because he positioned himself in the right place at the right time, when the salmons are swimming upstream, howling upstream to do their mating in the mating season. All the bear has to do is just, stand there and open the mouth, at the right position, at the right time, and take out the best fish. Some of the seagulls, they can be more faster than him, might not get the best fish. So we just want to deliver that little message, right? I want to say that we are not qualified really to go into the ideological, analysis and things like that. Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, I have one question for Stephen. As much as I wish to stay here in this country, my hope for this country has almost tarnished in the last election because it was so the support for the other side was like so overwhelming. It was like it was now or never. So and with the way they keep telling us that they're not being accountable for the billions and the billions, I do not know when our country will actually go into bankruptcy with the way our ringgit keep on depreciating. And so how, being a YP that you even came back from Singapore and the hope that you have wanting to make this place a better place, the election here, I feel that it works in such a way that before we play the game, we already lost it. So even though we have the majority support, we cannot win the election. So when else can we have a change to have a real hope for this country?
I'll keep it very short. Don't want this to become a political drama. The very simple answer to that is that when is it in the last 57, 8 years of independence that the opposition in the country achieved 53% of the popular vote? Only in the last elections. And the vote has been increasing. So the flip way of looking at it is because expectation was so high that you are so disappointed with the loss in the last elections. When in actual fact, when you look at the cold hard fact, it was the best outcome any opposition has ever achieved in the history of the country. Anyone who wants to be disappointed and disillusioned will be people like Kit Siang in 1999 when he even lost his own seat. They didn't give up, and that's why we got 53% today. Sure, the field is uneven, but never even anywhere. It's not even in Australia. You know, if you need 58% to win the government, then we work towards 58%. You go to US, they are against a completely different set of rules and systems, and you have to overachieve in order to achieve the same as everywhere else. That's something that we have to do. So the question for me, this is personal, is, look, if this is where I want to be, then if I get 58%, I work towards 58%, and it's not bitching about unfair basically. Of course, we will bitch about it so that people know that it's unfair, but don't use that as the excuse or the barrier stopping you from wanting to make changes happen. I think we need to look at it from the flip side of it. Coalitions come and go. I'm not going to tell you that we are a coalition, we are useless coalition as at this point in time. But it comes and goes. In 80s, you had Gagasan Rakyat. In 90s, you had Barisan Alternative. Then there were some in between arrangements, and then now you have Barisan Rakyat. But every time something breaks down, something new gets created, and it becomes better. So there will be disappointments, there will be so. But I believe that as society grows, as there's more education, as internet brings information to more people, and as greater urbanization changes these pattern of communications, I think people will get more aware. The question of change is that I feel that it's inevitable. It's only a question of when.
Water prices are increasing to 18%.
It's still the cheapest in the country.
No, it's increasing at
It is the cheapest in the country.
It's not.
Water prices is
Justification is absurd. That you is
okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, YB, for briefing the event.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to ask a question? Thank you very much for your presence. I hope that this has been a fruitful discussion for you. And I hope that all of you are well informed and refreshments are served out and the books are available for sale downstairs. Thank you very much. Have a pleasant evening.